Welcome to Canada! In the following presentation, we will discuss the Pestel analysts of Canada, our friendly northern neighbors, known for their multiculturalism, mass forestry landscapes, and generous supply of oil.
Canada is a constitutional monarchy and considered to be a stable democracy by most sources. Its governing structure is a mix of a constitutional monarchy along with the federal government, comprising of a parliamentary government. The head of state or monarch is Queen Elizabeth II. The powers are divided between Canada's 10 provinces and federal government in the country. In Parliament, there are two main branches: the House of Commons or lower house, which consists of 308 elected members, and the Senate or upper house, which consists of 105 members appointed by the Prime Minister of the country. Currently, the Prime Minister of Canada is Justin Trudeau. There are a few political indexes that will be discussed: political instability, political freedom, corruption perception, and rule of law. The Political Instability Index is measured on a scale of -2.5 to 2.5. Canada's indexes are much higher than the United States over the years, as shown by. The Political Freedom Index is measured on a scale from 0 to 100. Both Canada and the US score very high here, ranging between the 90 to 100 over the last decade. These ratings are not surprising considering that both countries are based on democratic principles. The Corruption Perception Index is measured on a scale from 0 to 100. Both Canada and the US score from 75 to 85 here, indicating that both countries are relatively clean, with Canada having higher scores. The rule of law states that laws equally apply to everyone and no one is above the law. The index is measured on a scale from -2.5 to +2.5. Both Canada and the US have high indexes for rule of law. This makes sense because these concepts are in the US Constitution, and this is also one of the fundamental principles of Canadian democracy. This section will discuss the economics of Canada. Canada has an open market system. The snapshot of the following data is based on 2016. Canada has a population of approximately 36.2 million, with a GDP per capita in US dollars of about $42,000, growth rate of about 1.5%, unemployment rate of 7%, and inflation rate of 1.5%. The exchange rate of CAD versus USD is about 1.32. The Human Development Index measures life expectancy, education, and per capita income, ranked on a scale from 0 to 1. Both the US and Canada have shown equal increasing trends over the last 2 decades, being at the higher ends from around 0.8 to 0.9, which makes sense because both countries are high. In the case of GNI per capita and total GNI, in both graphs, the trend has been upward for US and Canada from 1990 to 2016. However, the United States has higher numbers for GNI per capita and total GNI, which can be attributed to the US being a larger country and having higher budget revenues overall. Both countries have strong technological investments, with Canada showing growth in manufacturing, mining, and service. Economic freedom can be shown through the Economic Freedom Index, which is measured on a scale from 0 to 100. Both countries have high levels of economic freedom, with Canada being higher and keeping a steady level over the past few years. Regarding foreign direct investments, the following graphs depict FDI stocks and flows, both inward and outward, in millions of USD. Net outward and inward flows of FDI are much higher in the US than Canada over the last 10 years. Canada's levels remain relatively low over the last decade for both outflows and inflows. The low levels may indicate that Canada is an overall smaller economic player globally. Inward and outward FDI stocks show a similar story. Canada has relatively low levels for both inward and outward stocks over the last 10 years, as compared to the United States. For example, Canada's outward FDI performance index in 2011 was about 1.1. Even though there are improvements over the last few years, Canada lags behind top performers in FDI overall. Regarding historical foreign exchange instability and inflation over the last 10 years, the Canadian dollar versus USD exchange rate has been decreasing as depicted. The sharp decrease on the graph during 2011 and 2014 can be attributed to Canada's strength against the US economy over those years. However, the declining trend has continued over the past. Historical inflation rates have also fluctuated a lot in both countries. Notably, 2008 was a low year of low inflation for both. With regards to trade evolution, Canada has a significant amount of exports and imports. Graphs from the year 2015 are shown to give an idea of the various businesses and higher percentages in Canada. The top export countries in Canada: Mexico, China, Japan, South Korea, India, Hong Kong, Brazil, Colombia, Peru, and the United Kingdom. The USA has an overwhelming majority due to NAFTA, or the North American Free Trade Agreement, which has led to a dramatic increase in trade and economic integration between the two countries. Some of Canada's top exports and imports include mineral products, transportation, machines, metals, chemical products, precious metals, food, wood or lumber, plastics and rubber, paper, and textiles.
In this section, we'll discuss the socio-cultural aspect. Based on scores from 15-year-olds, Canada ranks higher than the United States in the PISA reading literacy scale. Trumpinaires measures come from the Trumpinaires and Hampton Turner model. They developed the model after spending years researching the preferences and values of people in dozens of cultures around the world. They found that people from different cultures differ in very specific and even predictable ways. This is because each culture has its own way of thinking, its own values and beliefs, and different preferences placed on a variety of different factors. They were able to determine that these differences fall into one of 7 different. In the chart, you can see how Canada compared to the United States. Hofstede's data was another way of understanding the differences in culture. He used 6 dimensions of culture. 1 was power distance index, 2 was individualism versus collectivism, 3 was masculinity versus femininity, 4 was uncertainty avoidance index, 5 was pragmatic versus normative, and finally 6, indulgence versus restraint. Our chart compares Canada to the United States. In Canada, English and French are the official languages of the country. English is the most spoken language at 59%, followed by French at 22%. Other languages included in Canada are Punjabi, Italian, and Spanish, to name a few. Canada is similar to the United States in that they both have diverse cultures and religions. The Catholic religion has the highest percentage of the population at 39%. The next highest would be people who don't have religion at 24%, followed by Protestant, which makes up 20% of the population. And finally, we have other smaller religions that make up the rest. Now, in the technology industry, Canada has fallen behind among developed countries on key business innovation performances. As you can see from the R&D expenditure, Canada falls behind compared to the United States in how much they put into research and development. Also, as you can see from the scientific and journal articles chart, Canada doesn't have as many articles published as compared to the United States. In the category of patent applications, we are far behind the United States as well. In 2015, Canada filed 4,277 patent applications compared to the United States' 288,330.
The Environmental Performance Index, or EPI, is a project led by Yale University. The EPI ranks countries' performance on high-priority environmental issues in 2 areas: protection of human health and protection of ecosystems. The first indicator discussed in this index is health impacts. Health impacts is an environmental risk exposure indicator that assesses human health risk associated with unsafe water and sanitation, as well as household and outdoor. Canada ranks 18 for health impacts, right above the U.S. in this category. The next indicator is air quality. Air quality measures the fine particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, and percentage of the population burning solid fuel indoors. Canada scores 91.16 with a rank of 36 in air quality. This is a positive change of 12.46% over the past 10 years. Canadian government, along with industry, non-government organizations, and individuals are all taking action, doing their part to reduce emission or harmful air pollutants from human sources. Another indicator is water and sanitation. Water and sanitation tracks the proportion of the population with access to safe drinking water and sanitation infrastructure. Overall, Canada may be considered a freshwater-rich country. On an average annual basis, Canadian rivers discharge close to 9% of the world's renewable water supply, while Canada has less than 1% of the world's population. Water Resources tracks the proportion of wastewater from households and industrial sources that is treated before it is released into the environment. In this index, Canada ranks 28, well above the United States ranking of 42. Water effluents are the largest source of population by volume to surface water in Canada. In Canada, all levels of government share the responsibility for managing the collection, treatment, and release of wastewater effluent. The Agriculture Index tracks nitrogen use efficiently to assess how well countries match fertilizer inputs to crops. Canada ranks 59 in this category, compared to the United States' 40. Fertilizer Canada is an industry association representing Canada manufacturers, wholesalers, and retail distributors of nitrogen, phosphate, and potash fertilizer used in the production of agriculture crops that help feed the world. This company focuses on advocacy, safety, and security. Forest. The Tree Cover Loss Indicator reports loss in areas with greater than 30% tree cover from 2001 to 2014. Canada ranks 82 compared to the U.S. rating of 105. Both Canada and the U.S. have had 0% change in the last 10 years. About 94% of Canada's forests are publicly owned. This ensures strong oversight of forest management activities. Canada ensures conservation and protection through sustainable forest management practices and strict laws. Fisheries assess the percentage of fish stocks overexploited or collapsed, weighted by the quality of reported catch data. Canada ranked 99 in this category, with a 5.9% increase over the past 10 years, compared to the United States' current rank of 84, with a decrease of 36.68 over the past 10 years. Biodiversity and Habitat tracks the protection of terrestrial and marine areas as well as the species that conservation policies aim to protect. Canada ranks 111 compared to the United States rank of 90. The potential capacity of agriculture landscapes to support wildlife in Canada has declined over the past 20 years, largely due to the intensification of agriculture and the loss of natural and semi-natural land cover. The Climate and Energy Indicators assess trends in national efforts to reduce carbon emission intensity. Canada ranks 64 compared to the U.S. rank of 44. The Government of Canada is taking action on climate change domestically and internationally. Under the Copenhagen Accord, Canada inscribed a GHG emission reduction rate that is aligned with the U.S. target, this being 17% below 2005 levels by 2020. International Property Rights Index is the world's only index entirely dedicated to the measurement of intellectual and physical property rights. Covering 127 countries, the 2017 IPRI reports on the property rights systems affecting 98% of world gross domestic product. Canada's physical property rights subindex increased by 0.44 to 7.91, with scores of 8.17 in property rights, 9.41 in registering property, and 6.14 for ease of access to loan. Legal and political environment. Canada's legal and political subindex increased by 0.1 to 8.37 with scores of 8.54 in judicial independence, 8.67 in rule of law, 7.55 in political stability, and 8.71 for control of corruption. Intellectual property rights. Canada's intellectual property rights subindex increased by 0.04 to 8.26 with scores of 8.1 in intellectual property protection, 9.08 in patent protection, and 7.6 in copyright protections.
After performing a Pestel analysis, we can determine the likely strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of doing business in Canada, such as gaining entrepreneur support and working close to home in a strong financial sector. Weaknesses, including the likely dependence Canada has on the United States, as well as the ever-changing exchange rate. Opportunities we would see include emerging in new markets, the service sector, and a wide variety of imports and exports. However, threats that would come about include the closing of small businesses, dollar correlation with the oil industry, and climate change.